So welcome. Thanks for watching and listening today. I want to talk with you about the importance of understanding relapse as a predictable cyclical process. Relapse of any kind often happens gradually. In fact, it usually does. And it can be broken down into three very predictable stages. And each stage has its own unique risks to your recovery. Let's talk about the first stage. And traditionally, that's been referred to as what we call emotional relapse. And I want to tell you a little bit about a few of the characteristics of the emotional relapse stage so that you can hopefully predict them and identify themselves in yourself. An important characteristic of the emotional relapse stage is denial. Now, you might find yourself thinking things like, you're not an addict, or this is easy, this is simple. There's a great parallel. Some of my clients who are involved in 12-step recovery programs describe this as the pink cloud. They just feel like they're on top of the world. They feel a sense of joy and relief and comfort and ease because they've stopped using for a little bit of time. And they just have the sense that it's all going to be much, much easier than they think it is. So at this stage, you're not actively thinking about using, but what's going on is you're probably showing poor self-care habits. And some signs of poor self-care habits are things that, like, you're bottling up your emotions. You're isolating from other people. So that could be that you're avoiding your support systems, you're avoiding meetings and therapy, or perhaps you're physically attending, you're showing up in body, but not emotionally and not mentally. So you could be hiding, avoiding engaging, avoiding sharing, avoiding doing the practical work of recovery. At this stage, you might find that your attention is focused on other people instead of yourself. So you might be thinking about their problems. You might be brainstorming ways that it could help them. You might be seeing their blind spots, or you might be very focused on how their behavior is affecting you. Now, at this stage of recovery, usually you're not having a lot of fun and enjoyment. So that aspect of self-care has gone out the window. You might be finding that you're just not eating well, you're not sleeping well. And again, I'm just going to jump back to, there's a lot of wisdom in the 12-step movements. And sometimes I love to share some of the tips that are given to me by my clients who are very involved in 12-step recovery. They use a word called HALT. It's an acronym, and it stands for hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. These being risk elements for emotional relapse. So when that desire for escape builds, then what happens is we will move into what's referred to as mental relapse. And here are some characteristics about this stage. First of all, it's a little bit different because in stage one, it doesn't feel like you're in a conflict or a struggle. Remember, at the surface level of your mind, you're feeling pretty okay. You might even be feeling like recovery is easy. Breaking the habit is pretty simple and straightforward and no big deal. You might be feeling very confident about recovery. Uh, but in this stage, that starts to get a little bit more shaky. So that's where there's an inner struggle or an inner conflict that shows up. And some signs of this inner conflict include having conscious thoughts about using, having cravings. So you might be thinking a lot about the topic of your use. You might be picturing it in your mind. Another key symptom or indicator is you start to have fond memories of your past use. So some of my clients, when they're in this stage, they start romanticizing their past use. They start talking with me about how much fun it was, how much enjoyment they had, how much pleasure their use brought them. And they start minimizing the consequences of their past use, right? So they overlook the trouble that the addiction, the compulsion, the bad habit was causing. What also happens at this stage is what we call bargaining. And an example of this it comes from somebody that I had a session with the other day. And she's recovering from, well, let me say this. She has been working on reducing her alcohol use for really years at this point. She'll go through phases where she's not drinking at all, and that will last, a few weeks, a month, maybe 2 months at the top. And then the bargaining kicks in. And she starts saying things to me like, she's just going to use on vacation and then she's going to stop. So, for example, recently she's talking about how she was adjusting her goal. Instead of abstaining from alcohol use entirely, what she decided she was going to do was that she was just going to not self-medicate with alcohol. So she wasn't going to drink when she was upset and she wanted to feel calmer. She wasn't going to drink when she was stressed out or angry or sad. Again, she wasn't going to self-medicate painful feeling. Instead, she was just going to drink when she just wanted to have fun. And in this case, she's talking about a girls' trip where she's planning to have fun. And she's discussing with me how she wasn't going to drink because she was angry or scared or upset about the different circumstances in her life. It was more that she just wanted to have a good time and that she deserved it. So another key indicator at this sign is that you start developing control schemes. And these are plans about how you're going to manage your use. And at the same time, you're probably going to find yourself looking for opportunities to use, actively planning your relapse. Again, trying to come up with a way to navigate so that you can use with the least harm that's possible. At this stage of the game, what is key is your ability to recognize high situation. Pardon me. At this stage of the game, what's key is your ability to recognize high risk situations. That's where the slippery part arises at this stage. In stage one, what's key is trying to notice and be aware of how much your self-care is slipping. But at this stage of the game, it's about really having a clear-eyed and sober recognition of just how slippery the situations are. Now, if you don't catch this, then what happens is you move into the next stage, which we call physical relapse. And here are some characteristics of the physical relapse stage. This often occurs when someone believes that they won't get caught. Nobody's going to find out. Their therapist, their accountability partner, their sponsor, if they're involved in a 12-step group, they can keep it from everybody. Physical relapse marks the point of actual behavioral relapse. So whatever the addiction is, if it's pornography consumption, you start watching porn again. You start using it. If it's weed, you start vaping or pop a few gummies. If it's drinking, you have a drink. I think you get the point.